When we think about our traditional jig fishing, almost immediately we think about that lure on the bottom, digging around, hopping, dragging, stitching, whatever it might be. And I love dragging a jig. However, it is solely dependent on the cover in front of us, and you're probably thinking, no kidding. But when that cover is up in the water column and bass are relating up and not all positioned on the bottom, that jig fall rate is critically important. This applies to dock fishing, standing timber, seawalls, brush piles that have some vertical depth to them. The possibilities for a jig to get hit as it sinks are quite extensive. Now, think about how often we take the time to experiment with the fall rate. I know I don't adjust as much as I should. If those fish are on the bottom, no big deal. But if they're not, that fall rate can make a substantial difference in the number of bites you get. We'll talk about how to choose a bit later, but first, we are going to look at the same jig, a 3/8 ounce finesse sized lure, with 3 different jig trailers. A creature bait that has some resistance to it, a rage craw that has a lot of resistance in the water column, and then a finesse TRD trailer, which is quite popular right now. And we will even line these 3 up side by side so you can get a good idea of the differences in the fall rate. Well, let's start with the jig and creature bait trailer. This is one of my favorite trailers to use on a jig when working the bottom. As you can see, it has what I would call just a nice drop to it. Not lightning fast, but it gets down there. Here is the craw trailer. The claws really flap and resist the water. Lots of action as this one is dropping towards the bottom. And here is the jig with the TRD trailer. Like I mentioned, this is a very popular option you see a lot of right now. With less resistance, we can see it drops noticeably quicker. Now let's watch them all side by side by side. I lined them up at the exact same starting point. And as we watch them fall, we can instantly see the TRD trailer is much, much faster. The creature bait and craw at first appear similar, but if you look towards the bottom, the creature bait is outpacing the craw. If you were dropping jigs on, let's say, standing timber that has some depth to it, the difference would be quite apparent. And of course, there are a huge range of soft plastic trailers you could use, but you get the idea. Now, how do you know, or when should you switch it up? Yes, we need to let the bass make the ultimate decision of what they're hitting or ignoring, but as a general rule of thumb, this is where I start. If the water is clearer, I opt for a faster drop. If the water is stained or dirty, I start with a slower drop, and my thought process is I want the bass just to react to it in clear water and not get a great look as it flashes by. In the stained water, I want the fish to have a tiny bit more time to dial in on it as it falls. Now, experimenting with fall rate on vertical cover is worth the time. You may just dial in a bite you weren't expecting. And hey, if you love bass behavior, be sure to check out the 40 videos in my members only bass behavior bundle. Links are down below. And if you would like to watch a video that really breaks down how bass behave under docks, there's some interesting footage there. Go ahead and check this one out right here. And make sure that you go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.